After putting over 200 hours into the Clawbringer class in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, I realized that there is a lot of issues with this character which are seemingly going unnoticed by the developers, and for that reason I'd like to make this constructive video here today to help them out and give them some tips on how I would go about fixing the character in the future. Since launch, I believe that the Clawbringer has been the weakest class in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands, and I also believe this only got worse with the latest patch to add Chaos 35 into the game, only amplifying the issues and making the recent buffs to things like the Storm Smite capstone basically invisible. So we're going to be going through the tree here, and I'm going to explain to you guys the different skills in the tree, my experience with them, what I think of them, and how we can fix them. Starting first with the Cleansing Flames action skill, something which for a lot of people is hit and miss, or perhaps just miss and miss. On paper, this sounds like a fantastic action skill, boasting more card damage than the Storm Dragon's Judgment action skill, an action skill which actively does more damage than Cleansing Flames. However, the issue with Cleansing Flames is that unfortunately, due to it dealing raw melee damage, it does not receive any buffs from the Clawbringer's tree, meaning it's an action skill which is a one-on-one dud. However, in comparison, Storm Dragon's Judgment actively gets boosted by the Dragon Aura skill. And while Cleansing Flames Fire Nova also gets the bonus from Dragon Aura, unfortunately the initial hit, which does all of the damage, does not. This is a major problem, as there is no skill in the Clawbringer's tree that directly buffs raw melee damage or physical damage in any way, apart from the Firebolt skill which buffs bullet damage. However, this does not apply to the Cleansing Flames action skill. This is a major problem, and it means that the Cleansing Flames skill does not get proper scaling from any of the skills in the tree, as they literally can't, meaning from level 1 to level 40 it remains basically at the same power apart from natural scaling, and relying on other skill trees to buff this skill is not the play if we're going to make a reliable character that can be versatile on all fronts. So my proposed fix to Cleansing Flames is to 1. Change the melee damage to be fire melee damage, and 2. Also up the damage of the Fire Nova. I would also recommend lowering the cooldown time, as in comparison to Storm Dragons, which has a lower cooldown time but in turn has more ways to deal damage from the throw, the callback, and the impact, it means that Cleansing Flames is probably always going to end up being the weaker of the two unless we lower the cooldown. Moving down the tree, we get to our first passive skill known as Dedication. Now, in the history of the Borderlands games, many times we have seen iterations of while your ward is full, you get a value, but unfortunately these skills have never really been all that great, and while there may be some outliers, for the most part, these diminishing return skills never really pan out well for the player, and I believe that Dedication is no different. Dedication has the potential to give you up to 25% action skill cooldown rate at maximum ward. However, due to the nature of the damage enemies deal to you in this game, and also due to the fact that 25% off of a 25-second skill is pretty minuscule, my recommendation for Dedication, as illustrated by my poor photoshopping skills right here, is to change the action skill cooldown rate to 10% per level, meaning you can get up to 50% at 5 out of 5. 50% is still perfectly balanced all things considered, and for 5 points into the skill it means that you might lose out on other important skills in the tree as a trade-off. The next skill we have is Blasphemous's Favor, and there's not too much to say about this other than the fact that it just doesn't deal a lot of damage at all, and while it is a 1 out of 1 skill, I do feel like the damage should be upped ever so slightly. However, the buffs that I'm going to talk about in just a second may help with this, so just take that with a pinch of salt. Getting into our first major rework skill here, we have Firebolt. When Wonderlands was first released, Firebolt was a skill that gave the player a passive 8% gun damage increase, and while this wasn't the biggest increase, it was still worth noting in the tree, as it was one of the few skills the Clawbringer actually had going for it. However, with the first hotfix to the game, the Firebolt skill was changed to do only bullet damage buffs, meaning that some guns that did not deal bullet damage no longer got buffed from this skill, meaning that the description here is actively false and deceiving. Firebolt currently only buffs guns that deal bullet damage, but it will not buff guns that deal gun damage and not fire bullets. And to be completely honest, I think the Firebolt skill is extremely underwhelming for what it does, giving us extra gun damage in a tree which actively already helps us out with that in the tier 1 Oath of Fire skill. The problem for me with the Clawbringer's tree is that there is way too many things to focus on at once, from ability damage to melee damage to elemental damage and now bullet damage. There is just way too many targets being placed on way too many heads. For this reason, my proposed rework of the Firebolt skill is to change the gun damage buff to 10% ability damage. This is great as it gives the skill direct synergy with skills like Blasphemous's Favor, Rebuke, and also Storm Smite. Now completely mirroring this skill on the other side we have Storm Breath. Storm Breath is designed to give you 12% passive damage reduction, however my issue with this skill is that it's already doing what the tier 2 Rebuke skill does for us, and while it is a little better and a lot cheaper to get Storm Breath, I almost feel like it's completely counterintuitive once again to the design of the class, which seems to be elemental damage, but it also seems to completely invalidate the usage of specking Rebuke, which I don't think is good tree design. For this reason, my proposed change to Storm Breath is to turn the 12% damage reduction into 10% additional lightning damage. Just to clarify my wording there, that means that lightning damage gets a 10% increase and does not mean you get 10% bonus lightning damage. Now to explain my reasoning for this change, giving Storm Breath 10% lightning damage goes into heavy synergy with skills like Indomitable. It also boosts skills like Blasphemous Favor, Rebuke, and also the tier 1 Oath of Thunder. But additionally, and you'll have to forgive me for my poor reading of the damage formula, I also believe that 10% lightning damage would then be further multiplied by the Dragon Aura skill. For this reason, it would be very recommended that players go all the way down the tree to Storm Breath, but while they're at Storm Breath, why don't we take their fancy with some of the other reworked skills? Let's talk about Indomitable, a skill which has been reported numerous times by the community as not working, and also apparently does not proc proper health gate, which means when you get that initial boost of invulnerability, all an enemy has to do is tap you one more time and you instantly go down, ruining the effect of this skill. Indomitable is all about survivability, but unfortunately with a 2-minute cooldown, a lack of health gate, and sometimes it just straight up not working, there's a lot of issues that need to be fixed here. First of all, I think it would be in good taste to fix the issue of going down instantly after it gets procced, so maybe some kind of 3-second invulnerability window here when it procs or something of the sort, but right now this skill is just really a waste of time taking for a lot of people. Secondly, I would also look into the issue of these skills sometimes not working, as for obvious reasons that's a problem. And finally, I would also recommend changing the cooldown of Indomitable to be 60 seconds instead of 120 seconds. In balancing, you could also bring the bonus lightning damage down to 10% or the duration down to 10 seconds as a counterpart. However, it is my belief that if we made these changes to the skill, it would be a lot more viable and a lot more people would want to run it, as opposed to right now where I think a lot of people are taking it off of the assumption it's good rather than the facts. And now finally, for the last skill I want to talk about, let's get into Awe, a highly controversial skill which since the start of the game has been making waves, and I'm going to explain exactly why. Originally, the way that Awe would work is that when you deal damage with lightning, it would give you an additional critical hit chance. For example, I'm currently getting 22% critical hit chance, and the way the game is calculating this is by taking 22% of my current value and adding it on. However, the way Awe used to work was by straight up giving you plus 22% critical hit chance. So if I currently had 11% critical hit chance, this would give me 33%, whereas currently it's more around 13. Now this was later changed to scale correctly, but as such made the Awe skill a little bit tricky to work with and honestly not that worth it at all now. Many people don't spec Awe, and for good reason. The increase to critical hit chance is extremely minimal and not really worth taking, and while this does preserve the intended feat of the Stabbermancer class, I do feel that it also in turn did kind of ruin this skill for the Clawbringer. But additionally, the fire damage you need to deal to get the extra critical hit damage that Awe provides cannot be gotten through bonus elements, meaning Awe does not have any synergy with the tier 1 Oath of Fire skill. This is a major problem and basically breaks the skill entirely unless you get your pet to deal the damage or actually use a fire weapon. Firstly, I would directly recommend fixing the bug so that Awe can now be procced with any fire damage in the game, meaning it finally has synergy with the tier 1 Oath of Fire skill, meaning that Awe instantly becomes a much more desirable skill. And secondly, instead of making Awe give you plus 11% critical hit chance per point, my proposed change here, which might ruffle some feathers, is to change the critical hit chance back to post-add, adding the value on top of your critical hit chance. However, as a trade-off, instead of it being 11% per point, change it to 2% per point, meaning that 3 out of 3 you get plus 6% critical hit chance, which trust me, that's a lot. as in Ore's current state, it can only give you pretty much a maximum of 5%, so this is a direct buff to the Ore skill without completely breaking it. It also means that you can get extra points into this skill with class mods, further boosting that chance maybe up to 10%. And that, my friends, is how I would go about changing the Clawbringer class in Wonderlands. And while I'm sure I'm going to disagree with a few of you guys in the comment section down below on my changes, that is absolutely okay. But I would like to make sure that all criticism and all feedback that we give remains at least constructive, as that is the most important thing. I have put literally hundreds of hours into this class, and while the playstyle is something that I absolutely adore, I just can't sit around and watch this class suffer any longer while the other classes ride around on their diamond ponies. So if you would like to give me your feedback on these changes in the comment section down below, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you guys so much for your support, and thank you to everybody who actually requested this video, because I didn't think it was something you guys would want to see, but man, you really wanted it, so here it is. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.